welcome to Western Sydney Unfiltered with Bishop Vincent Long, the Bishop of Parramatta. I think also, last time I checked, the only Vietnamese bishop of the Catholic Church outside Vietnam. So, and also your family has its own diaspora as all over Australia and other parts of the world. But we're delighted, Bishop Vincent, that you've taken up your spot in Western Sydney, and maybe give us a bit of a background about your connection to this wonderful region of ours.
Oh, thank you, Christopher, and I'm delighted to be part of this Western Sydney Leadership Dialogue. Well, I've lived in GWS for many years now. I began my journey as a Franciscan at Mount St. Francis Monastery in the early 80s in Kellyville, which is in the northwest region of Sydney, not far from here. Among other duties, I used to milk cows early in the morning, and that was when Kellyville was mostly market garden still, you know. Then in the 90s till the early 2000s, I served as a parish priest in Kellyville, and that whole Windsor Road corridor really went gangbusters in terms of housing developments, you know. For a time,
the wonderful Vietnamese term, gangbusters.
So I used to go and door knock people's houses and let them know, you know, the kind of services we offered. It was a way of inviting people to join the community, because, you know, there was that sense of being isolated. You might move into the new area and you feel very disconnected, you know. So building connections was one of my goals as a parish priest. And then since May 2016, I've been appointed the bishop of this wonderful diocese that covers most of Western Sydney, all the way from the Hills district to the Blue Mountains. And so I've been privileged, Christopher, to know the area from different vantage points, and with a combined period of over 14 years. And I loved GWS.
How do you think your journey to Australia, but physical and emotional journey to Australia, Vietnam, the great movement of what we would call the Vietnamese boat refugees who came to Australia in the 70s particularly, how do you think that in a region that's such a multicultural community, how do you think that background helps you understand this region well?
Well, you know, Western Sydney is incredibly diverse, as we all know, and the Vietnamese diaspora is part of that great diverse mix of nationalities and backgrounds, and I think being a boat person, being a person of non-English background, and a relatively recent migrant to this great country, I have a particular prism through which I appreciate the great richness and diversity of Western Sydney.
As the descendant of boat people myself, Celtic-speaking involuntary tourists from Ireland in the First Fleet to this great part of the world, I too didn't. My fellows didn't have much say in the matter either. It is something special about Western Sydney, isn't it? There's a great, my friend who's been part of Western Sydney Uni for many years, Dang Adut, the Sudanese refugee. There's a great line in the ad we ran about the UN got him out, Western Sydney brought him in. And that's this region to bring people from everywhere. And while we'll have breakouts every so often, on a global scale, the racial harmony, as we've just celebrated Harmony Day last week, the multicultural rugby league this weekend just passed, it is quite a miracle, isn't it? The relative.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we don't appreciate how wonderful this great diverse Western Sydney, and yet how harmonious and how how people work together to create this dynamic region of Australia, and it's something I think we don't fully appreciate.
You're also involved with, you look very young. You just celebrated 200 years of Catholic education in Western Sydney, the organisation last year. While you provide incredible spiritual leadership through your role, you're also running a major commercial entity, being a not-for-profit entity, being Catholic education. Where do you see the sort of the growth of Catholic Ed across the region, and maybe its integration to higher education? Catholic Ed has been an outlier in a way. Fred Whitby, and the CEO, is famous for having a unique approach to education. Where do you see the mix between education and community with your role in charge of the diocese across Western Sydney?
Yes, well, I am very privileged to be in my position that among other roles, as you mentioned, obviously a system of schools. We have 74 schools, inclusive of primary and secondary. Only 2 weeks ago or so, I went to Box Hill, which is a new suburb, a new region that is at the engine of the growth of outer Western Sydney, and we have a school called Santa Sofia with 1,400 students, and when we began a couple of years ago with no physical building on site, the students were hosted by a neighboring school, and we only had 300. And by the time the buildings finished and opened, we have 1,400. So it's a phenomenal growth, and it's something that we are very privileged to be a part of.
And I partnership with, I think, Celestino at the time, a developer who you're also partnering with at the Science Park for a proposed STEM school. So is that one of the things Catholic Ed will look at, working with developers to bring schools into communities put together in the growth areas?
Well, I think our philosophy is that we are a partner within the community, and we don't see ourselves as being insular or a closed system. We work in partnership with the civil society, with other great institutions, in order to achieve the common good, which is the development of our people, and in particular our young people. So I see that as a sacred duty. I think it's important to educate, to form our young people, so that they have the opportunity to reach their full potential, and to contribute to the great society that is ours.
We've been talking to a few faith-based leaders across Western Sydney, because I think maybe because of its multiculturalism, faith plays an important role in the community that we serve. We spoke to Reverend Marta, the incoming head of the Uniting Church, last week, who's of Pacifica background. We're speaking to one of the imams coming up. One thing about Western Sydney is that, and although you're considered very much a moderate in the Catholic Church, or I'd say my kind of Catholic, there is a conservatism across Western Sydney that has seen in recent years voting against a move for a republic, majority voting against marriage equality, that saw a lot of vaccination hesitancy, etc. Is that conservatism a natural wave that goes with our region? Is it the early stages of migration, and each next generation becomes more secular, less conservative? Where do you position that Western Sydney community in terms of its social conservatism?
Yeah, I think people bring with them their ideas regarding gender identity, regarding this whole notion of what the society should be, and I think the role of religion isn't just to affirm those positions, but also at times to challenge and to point out the way forward. So I for instance, in relation to the matter of gender identity among young people in particular, I think that it's important to walk and to care for young people who are already at risk of marginalization. The task of the society as a whole and the faith community in particular is I think, to affirm and to support young people who are at risk of being bullied or demonized or even subjected to violence on account of their gender identity, or even on account of other accidents of birth, their background, their race, or even their ability or disability. So I think the role of religion and the role of the faith-based community is to protect and to accommodate and to accompany people so that they can reach their full potential. And I recognize that in our Western suburbs and in the GWS, there are different faith traditions that responsible for different outcomes in terms of the marriage equality debate. But I think regardless of those, I see my role certainly as a faith leader to provide an inclusive, safe, caring, affirming environment in which young people can grow.
How difficult is that sometimes, because of those who've gone before you in the Catholic Church and that abuse of trust in young people? How difficult is it to the wonderful message you just spoke about, having the church as a safe place for disenfranchised youth to try and assist them? How difficult has that been made in recent times by the revelations of that abuse of that trust in elements of the church?
It is a difficult task when you challenge existing attitudes that are discriminatory or that are unhealthy for the life of the society and for the life of young people who are marginalized and put at risk on account of their gender identity, etc. But I think that is the space, a very fraught, very confronting space to get into, and yet I think that that's also a place where the faith-based communities like the Catholic Church must commit to itself in order to provide a safe and a healthy environment for young people, and I don't think we should shy from it.
How do you keep the church relevant in a modern, increasingly secular society? I mean, the Catholic Church of Western Sydney isn't the same one where I used to go to St Patrick's Cathedral every Sunday morning to very solemn services, etc. We've just seen one of the great impacts on our region with the lockdowns and how that, in some ways, we've seen as discriminatory against some of the areas in which you have pastoral care. How do you keep the church relevant as a voice for social policy, as an influencer for those you protect? How do you modernise the brand so that your flock still follows and gives you an authority and capacity to seek better outcomes?
Well, there's an adage well known in the church, that is, the church is always in need of reform. People don't realize that that the church does go through radical reform. The late English Cardinal John Henry Newman used to say that to live is to change, and to be perfect is to change often. So change and reform are part and parcel of the growth of the church. And the Royal Commission has shown that the sexual abuse crisis in the church is a symptom. It's a symptom of a broken system and a dysfunctional culture. And this culture is predicated on the notion the church is insular, is a closed and unaccountable organism to the broader community, or to the world. And it's very much the notion that gave rise to this closed-in and dysfunctional culture that the Royal Commission determined. So fortunately, we had that moment of epiphany, Christopher, in the 60s with the good Pope John XXIII, who convened what came to be known as a kind of a revolutionary council called the Second Vatican Council. And this council set a stage for a new, a fresh understanding of the nature of the church. So basically, we abandoned that notion of a closed system, of an insular organism, and we adopted this new way of being church, which is based on partnership and collaboration and participation, on an empowerment, as opposed to the old way of clerical control and lay people don't have to.
Well, there's other reformers like you and our mutual friend, Monsignor Tony Doherty, and others who keep reminding the church that it has this role in society and an outreach and not to the insular. I think there's a confidence. Might I ask you quickly about, as a person of Vietnamese heritage, are you comfortable with the level of integration in the church, in politics, in business, in the progress that the Vietnamese community has made significantly since the 70s with such a large influx? Is the Vietnamese diaspora in Australia having the influence that you think it deserves already?
I think it's a slow process, Christopher. But the Vietnamese migrants, like other groups of migrants before, have by and large integrated into the life of Australian society with a degree of success. you know, that might not be obvious in the field of politics, although there
Science, education, and medicine, there's been significant development.
yeah.
It'll been an overtly political engagement in the traditional ways of community leadership, or as much in the churches. Unlike your succession, you still stand out as a senior Vietnamese man in the church. So I think you're right that in the concentration of places like Bankstown and Parramatta that have been so fundamentally structured around the influence of the Vietnamese community, it's been a proud record, but it just doesn't seem to have set into the more obvious community leadership areas, but in individual enterprise.
Yeah, and even in terms of the assimilation into the society. Do you remember in the 80s or early 90s, Parramatta used to be, you know, pilloried as a drug capital.
Invasion was a short answer.
But you know, I think over the years that kind of an unwelcome reputation has been dispelled, and you know, Vietnamese, as much as other groups of immigrants to Australia, have made a significant contribution, and you know, we're part of this rich cauldron of diversity that is called GWS.
Maybe I'll leave you with one question to you. You have had a magnificent contribution already to the GWS region, both in education and in spirituality and community leadership. What do you see as the future for GWS? When you landed here many years ago, you have a brighter view now of what the future of this region will be? You have fears for part of it. What's your view about the next 10 to 20 years of Greater Western Sydney's development?
Well, I think Sydney is one of the greatest cities in the world, but it also faces formidable challenges going forward. We have become in my view, a very unequal city. And the danger is that we could widen the chasm between the rich and the poor instead of narrowing them. While we have not reached the level of inequality in some global cities, notably in the USA, I am a frequent traveler to the USA, and I could see, especially in the Los Angeles and other places of America, there's that huge chasm between the rich and the poor. I mean, we have you know, we have that inequality, but not as pronounced as in some parts of the USA. So I think we've seen the inequity issue being highlighted during pandemic. For instance, the rate of vaccination, of even the rate of transmission was much higher in poorer suburbs than they were in the healthy ones. The unequal distribution of wealth often leads to unequal access to services, including health, including education, including infrastructure, etc. And so the GWS, I believe, bears the brunt of the pandemic, and it lags behind in terms of public investments. So going forward, I believe that we need to really reimagine what an inclusive, egalitarian and diverse, harmonious society looks like. And I think what would our great city would look like if we began to work together to invest in its people, in all their diversity, and across all socioeconomic realities. You know, I believe we have an opportunity to really dismantle this notion that GWS is a poor cousin or sometimes referred to as a dormitory of the inner core of Sydney, you know, and so we have the opportunity to make this city, or GWS in particular, a truly great, a truly quintessential Australian metropolis that can be really a template for the world.
Well, Bishop Vincent Long, you have a unique perspective on this region. You have a unique capacity through your school network and through the pastoral work to help make that happen. And I think you're widely recognised as one of the powerful voices for an inclusive Western Sydney to balance opportunity and responsibility. And long may it continue, sir. Thank you for making Western Sydney your home. As I'd say, good luck and Godspeed. You've got more chance of that than most of us. Thank you for being part of Western Sydney Unfiltered.
Thanks very much, Christopher. And it's been a delight to have this conversation, and even more importantly, to join the Western City Leadership Dialogue to advance the common vision for the great GWS.
Thank you, sir.